There was no playbook. It was really, if you're an entrepreneur, you've got to take risks, and you try to take as many calculated risks as you can. If I could go back in my lifetime and say, what's a big mistake? I wish I figured this out earlier.
Ask questions, ask why.
It takes a special leader to help you grow in a certain role.
Doesn't matter how I speak, doesn't matter how I look.
And it holds true as you think big and don't let anybody stop you.
Now that's a success story. Thanks everybody for joining this episode of Success Stories. Today I have the owner and president of Pacific Hardwood, Robert. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Good morning, Steve. Thank you very much. How are you today?
Doing well, doing well. Hey, let's dive right in. Where I always like to start is where did you start at in your career journey that led you to kind of where you're at now? If you could take me through that arc.
Well, I grew up in a little town in upstate New York called East Greenbush. I went to RIT. I got an engineering degree. I knew I didn't really want to do engineering though, so I've always been very attracted to people and operations and more on the sales side of the business. My mom was a salesperson and a waitress, so I got that kind of personality from her. And my dad was in construction, so I got kind of the kind of business toughness, I think, from him. So when I graduated from RIT, I spent about 16 years growing up the corporate ladder. So I started with Unilever out in Connecticut, and my wife and I moved 6 times in 10 years. So we went from New York all around New England, and then down to Atlanta for a few years, Charlotte, North Carolina for a few years, and then out to California. So a lot of moving in a short period of time. That was kind of the first 15 years of my career was more spent in a corporate environment, in roles of increasing scale.
Gotcha. As you're going up that corporate ladder, were you on the sales side, the engineering side, marketing side? Really
mostly the operations side. So I started out as an engineer for 6 months because that was my degree with Unilever. And then I don't know if you remember Axe body spray. It was pretty popular about 20 years ago. It's pretty nasty smelling stuff, but Unilever was launching that, and I got to work with a co-packer, and the VP over there took a liking to me. So I had the unique opportunity at 23 years of age to run a pretty large factory. So I had almost 400 employees, on a 3-shift basis. So pretty young, I got thrown into operations. I then moved down to Atlanta, and I worked for Acuity Brands, which was both half lighting company and half specialty chemicals. But what was interesting about that opportunity is they were really diving into lean manufacturing, like the Toyota production system, kind of the Japanese methodology of how to make things, one-piece flow and single-minute changeovers. And they were really very serious about it. So I got to work with the people in Japan that invented it in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And that really kind of springboarded my career because I became a lean expert. So I went and got my MBA at Emory at the same time I was working. That was a crazy 16 months of like 110 hour work weeks. But I got my MBA in finance. I really enjoyed working down there and the work we were doing. It was fascinating to see us reduce scrap by 60% or increase efficiency by 45%, using once you learn them, and they're very simple methodologies, you just have to have a lot of discipline to execute them. But I was working in really heavy duty chemicals, and I saw kind of the effects that it had on people. And I just knew I wasn't going to be able to do that long term. So I went to work for a company called RSI Home Products, which was the world's largest cabinet manufacturer by volume. And I started out running their North Carolina facility, which was about 1.1 million square feet with about 1,200 employees in it. So we took the lean methodologies from Japan, and we put them in that factory, and we reduced scrap over 60%, as I mentioned, just like the other factory, and we increased our production throughput over 50%. So that led me to an almost 8-year career with that company, bouncing around into all different parts of the business. So I got to run operations, in a single location and then multiple locations, and then be the global director of lean manufacturing to kind of make that transition to that methodology throughout the company. And then I moved out to California about 13 years ago to run all of product design and development there. And that was a good experience because I had no experience doing it. So I was kind of thrown in the deep end. And then I spent the last year and a half there running global ops. So I had 7 factories in 4 different countries. So pretty good run on the corporate side, but mostly in the ops side of the business.
Yeah. Was it nice to get back into it when you started RTI? Was it the name of the company? Was it nice to get back into like RSI?
RSI, yeah.
Was it nice to get back into or kind of your roots with your father, right? The construction side was that?
Yeah, well, this was more mass market production. So like if you go into Home Depot or Lowe's, 70% of what you see there was made by that company. But that was a great company to work for because it really helped me now as an entrepreneur really understand the value of knowing your numbers and really having that attention to detail to really know your business. So, I'm on the board for the Entrepreneurs Organization of Orange County, and I find it interesting because I get to interact with a lot of entrepreneurs, and they're all successful to some degree. And it amazes me how many business owners really don't know their numbers still as I get to know people, right? So, we've been able to scale my business, Pacific Hardwood, almost 4x in the last 4.5 years. And that's really a result of a lot of the stuff that I learned at RSI from a business management standpoint.
Yeah, yeah. What's your take on the education? The formal training, formal education, secondary education versus your real world corporate experience in education. My take is always a blend of both because you're going to get different points of view and perspectives, and how you learn and how you grow as a professional. But what's your take on it?
Well, it's interesting to say that because I have 3 kids that my oldest is just in high school in his first year, and I've got 2 right behind him. So, this newer generation, really, a lot of them don't want anything to do with education. They see Instagram and they see YouTube,
Yeah,
TikTok, and they think they're just going to become instant entrepreneurs and successful, right? So, what I would say is, I think education shows discipline. That I've referenced, going to business school and working full time and doing those 110-hour work weeks. That was a lot of fortitude and discipline to just push through that. The other thing I liked about business school in particular was, in my 20s, I was kind of the young hotshot at companies just moving up. But when I went to business school, I was surrounded by other people who were also young hotshots that were moving up really fast, and I wasn't the sharpest pencil in the barrel every time. And most of that work was having to be done in teams. So it really taught me how to work with other high functioning, ambitious individuals, et cetera. In terms of like the nuts and bolts, I'll be candid. I don't use a lot of what I learned in any of my schooling really to run my business. We have a decent sized business. We do about 20 million in revenue. But a lot of what I run it's actually sitting right here. So I run a lot of this business off of this calculator on a daily basis. Obviously we have more sophisticated systems as well, but custom quoting, a lot of it's just basic arithmetic and that kind of scar tissue you build over the years, learning how to deal with vendors and suppliers and customers and supply chain issues and inflation. A lot of that just comes with the experience and the scar tissue that comes along with the years. And then the world's changing very fast. So, marketing, for instance, a lot of our growth has been digital marketing and social media dependent. Last year we did almost $10 million on Instagram, B2B, which shocks me because we're selling hardwood flooring.
Wow, that's amazing.
Contract builders. Yeah, it's something. But, I don't think I'm going to go back to school and have a 60-year-old professor teach me digital marketing. It just changes.
No, you don't think that's going to happen?
No, I don't think so. It changes so fast. We're doing a lot with AI, for instance, and that changes by the day or the week. So I agree with you, Steve, though. You need a mix. I think education teaches you discipline and a lot of the social things that you need to have to be able to deal with others. Now, if you want to be a cardiologist or you want to be a civil engineer building bridges, then you better learn a trade or a discipline very, very, very well. But from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I think a lot of it is learning by doing.
Yeah, for sure. What about the leadership aspect? Do you think you learn more, obviously, in your role, or did any of in your corporate positions along your journey, was there any intense or strategic leadership type of training that you went to, or that you were kind of went through, or maybe a mentor or somebody that kind of held your hand along the way or guided you in any way?
Yeah, I think mentors are really important. So I think, when I was in the corporate world, I really put a lot of value on having relationships with the people I worked for. So I never just looked at it as I have a job. And when I hire people now, I say, look, if you're looking for a job, don't come work here. I don't want people that are looking for a job. If you're looking for a career, if you're looking to learn, if you're looking to grow inside and outside of work, then I'm excited to work with you. So even at a very young age, I don't know if it's just my personality, I try to really latch on to not just who I worked for, but maybe who they worked for and get as much mentoring as possible because, I have a blog. It's officialrobertjohn.com. You can check it out. And a lot of those blog posts that you read a lot about the value of, learning from others and people who are, steps ahead of you now. There's no need to go through every single pain point. I'm a big believer in if you've got a story to tell or some scar tissue that you got, I'd rather learn it from you than go through it myself. They say failure is the best teacher, and I do agree to that to an extent, but you can learn a lot from other people's failures and not have to experience the pain yourself.
Yeah, I love it. We talk a lot about failure and failing forward, right?
Yeah.
You can't go back. Yeah. Let's talk about Pacific Hardwood and where you're at now. You said 13 years since you founded it?
No, I've been in California for 13 years,
Over
but
California.
at the end of my RSI experience, to be candid, I got really burned out. So I was traveling 20, 22 days a month. I was waking up in a different city every 3 days. At the time, I had just had my first child, or excuse me, my third child. I'm going to start that over. Okay?
Yep.
We'll go back to
Yep.
this. Yeah, so I've been in California 13 years, but the first I had a nice middle class lifestyle. But my mom waited tables, my dad was a pipe fitter, so I had a nice upbringing. But I certainly wasn't used to the lifestyle I was living in my early to mid 30s, and I lost myself. So I started to develop some bad habits. I compromised my character in some ways that I shouldn't have, and I just got to a position where that wasn't sustainable. Like to maintain my family or the type of person I wanted to be. So really, my biggest failure in life turned into my biggest step forward. You talked about falling forward a few minutes ago. Exiting the corporate world was really scary because, I'm 33, 34 years old. I'm making more money than I ever thought I'd make, and I'm living this lifestyle. Now I'm unemployed in Southern California with 4 people to take care of. So that was scary.
Scary, right? Yeah.
Super
Yeah,
scary.
for sure.
Super scary. So I remember 2 days after I left, I started a consulting company. So there was no downtime. And I helped some startups around LA. So I did a food company, promotional products company, a fast fashion company. And then my next client was actually the business I own now, Pacific Hardwood. So the previous owner,
really?
he was about 15, 16 years older than me. And he was in some ways looking for an exit and I was looking for an entrance. So we worked together for about 6 years. And I ended up buying the company right before COVID, which was an experience in itself.
Perfect timing. But how did COVID, I mean, that transition, talk through that a little bit. How did COVID impact you? And how do you think it would have been different, your acquisition without COVID?
Well, at first it seemed like it was going to be a big curse, and then I know it was a terrible situation for lots of people. From a business standpoint, it was probably the biggest blessing the business could have. I hate to put it that way.
Yeah.
But it was
There's a lot of people that fall into that bucket, just like you said. And you have a little bit of guilt about that, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's just a very
Yeah.
interesting experience. So I bought the business in January of 2020, and I mortgaged my house, and I went $6 million into debt, and I emptied my life savings. And then, 8, 9 weeks later, we were shut down. So I didn't know what the hell was going to happen. I thought, oh boy, I'm going to be bankrupt pretty soon. And now not only did I just spend 6 years putting my position to buy this business, now I've got all my assets on the line, and I'm going to be starting completely over, in my early 40s. So I'll tell you a quick story that's funny. That night, I remember there's a couch right over here in my office that I slept on a lot during that period of time, trying to figure things out. So I looked at the governor's order in California, and it had a list of essential businesses, and one of them was a hardware store. So I went out to Home Depot and I bought about $4,500 worth of hardware, and I brought it back and I decorated the entire office and showroom like a hardware store. And I met with all the employees and I told them, I said, look, I don't know what's going to happen here. And if you're not comfortable working, I respect that. But if you do want to work, I'm staying open. We're going to park in the back. We're going to lock the front door and we're going to keep going. We're a large manufacturing company. So there were compliance officers driving around and we just made it look like we were closed. And luckily 2 weeks or 3 weeks later, we were deemed an essential business because we were a company that serviced the construction, trades for building real estate. But it was really hairy there for a couple of weeks where I thought that, we were going to go under in fairly short order. But thank God, that didn't prove to be the case. And then secondarily to that, the government started handing out money like Pez, right? So because we had all this overhead and employees, we were able to take advantage of the PPP programs, the disaster loans, the employee retention credits. So we were able to inject several $1 million into the business that we used for good uses in the business. But it was kind of like getting a private equity partner without having to pay them. Yeah, well, we had to pay a lot of the money back, but on a long-term, low interest rate basis. But it was like getting a PE partner without having a partner. It was a silent partner in the background that just allowed us to keep executing. So from there, we dumped that in, and it's been kind of a rocket ship since.
Awesome. That's excellent. A lot of people, you had to adapt, right, to get through that time because it was uncertain. Nobody had a game plan or an SOP for how to navigate that. It just wasn't happening.
No, and then the supply chain disruptions too. We're near Long Beach, and the port was so backed up there were 65 boats, just floating around the ocean. You couldn't get materials in. So navigating. Luckily, we're a domestic manufacturer, but we do get some of our base products from overseas. And so there was some hairy times there where we had to make strategic decisions about, grossly overbuilding our inventory just so we knew we were going to have it. And, to your point, there was no playbook. It was really, if you're an entrepreneur, you've got to take risks, and you try to take as many calculated risks as you can. And sometimes the risks are a lot larger than others. And that was a very dynamic and risky time, for sure.
Awesome. Glad it worked out for you. Talk about it. I'm assuming you didn't touch upon it, and if this is getting on the personal side, I understand. But talk about how exiting from corporate. The term work-life balance, right? And you were trying to find that. It's odd that you kind of reference that or going into the entrepreneurship, because most entrepreneurs they're trying to exit. So you were going from that corporate grind, which I feel was probably your where there's a lot of stress and anxiety with the family, probably self-imposed, but career driven, right? That's your greatest asset. That's how you got there. How does that translate over being an entrepreneur now, with that work-life balance and finding some homeostasis there?
Well, I would tell you I probably work more now. The difference is I'm in control of my schedule to some degree, right? So I try to put myself in a situation where I would have as much autonomy and control of my life as I could. So my factory is 8 miles from my house. I can get here 8 different ways in 12 minutes, even in California traffic. If something's bottled up, I go a different way. So the amount of time I put into work is probably as much or more than ever, but I'm able to break that up into chunks. I could get up at 4:30 in the morning and work on some stuff. And then I can, in the morning go work out with my kid, take him to school, stop by and grab lunch together. There's just a lot of different ways for me to control my time and break up my day. And then the one thing I've really tried to focus on is I really minimize business travel. So if I'm going to do business travel, I try to pair it with something that's non-business at the same time, so that it's an asset for everyone. But that control of my schedule is important to me. No one has complete control of their schedule. We have things where something in the factory breaks down and I have to get involved, or a customer needs help at the last second. But that autonomy and freedom to kind of make my schedule mine as much as possible allows me to not really worry too much about what people would call work-life balance. I enjoy what I do, so that cheesy kind of saying, if you love what you do, it's not work. Most of what I do, I enjoy, so I don't really look at it as a stressful thing. I look at it as an exciting kind of thing I can pour passion into. But being able to manipulate my schedule to my discretion is, very important to me.
So you reference your kids a little bit, and they're getting to that age where they're obviously thinking about careers. Are you guiding them into secondary education? You guiding them, are they going to jump on board with you?
Well, it's interesting. Now, my middle one just started working here about 3 weeks ago. So he's working 25 hours a week here. And he kind of fought it for a couple of years. I would offer him opportunities. He wanted nothing to do with it. But as he's gotten older and he has these material things he wants, or he's starting to set goals for himself, and he kind of sees how the business has scaled and grown. I've always brought them over here, not really push them to work here, but to kind of show them like, hey, look at this new robot we just put in, or look at this new building we built. As they get older, they get smart, I think, and light bulbs start going off and go, well, wow, this is something, right? So maybe this is a way for me to kind of springboard. So, the college thing will be interesting. I'm not averse or opposed to it. If they need a plan, if there's not going to be just living off daddy. So there's going to be, if you have some sort of professional plan that you have where you're going to work for someone else, or you're going into business for yourself with a solid business plan, I'll support it. If you want to go to school just for either the experience, or you have a specific career path that you want to follow, then I'm supportive of that as well. I think, I don't want to call it selfishly, but, part of me I'd like to work probably 10 more years in this business at the level I'm working at, maybe 7 to 10, 11 years. I'd love to see one or more of the kids get interested in it and come in and, kind of carry on a legacy for it, rather than me just pop it and sell it. But, that's really going to be up to them. So they got to find their own way in the world, and I'm here to support them, but I don't think it's my spot to push them in one direction or the other.
Gotcha. What are some, talking about Pacific Hardwood, what are some obstacles or maybe industry things that you see coming down the line, trends, forecasting the future, or you brought up social media and AI, where, it's just every day is a new day, right? What's coming down the line and what's accessible and available to us. What do you see in your industry or for your business specifically in the future?
Well, we're very blessed from the standpoint of we're really making luxury products. Now, I wouldn't call it wood flooring. So even though 90% of what we do is wood flooring, we're at the very, very high end of the market. So we make about 3.5 million square feet a year, but it's one job at a time. So it could be 250 square foot repair job, or it could be a 250,000 square foot luxury condominium tower. Because of that, we're not as affected by what goes on with the economy as it goes up and down a little bit. Now, obviously, if there was a collapse everyone's affected. But really affluent and wealthy people, they're going to spend money regardless of what's going on. So we're fairly insulated from that. And because we're custom, we're also insulated from having to compete with the imported products, like the standard boxwoods. Our clients want what they want, when they want it, how they want it, and they don't want everything that their neighbors have when they go to their cocktail parties on Friday nights, right? So the business is there's, they say there's riches and niches. And this business, we've scaled from about 6 million to 20 million over the last 4.5 years. And I believe we can double again in the next 2 to 3 years. So that's the blessing. Now, the challenge is more on the human capital side. So as the business grows, you have to scale the team to grow with it. And the people who help to be successful at 6 to 10 million are not the people that are going to help it be successful from 20 to 40 million. And honestly, that's my main pain point right now. That's really, I have a lot of emotions about it, to be honest. So, I've got good people. They'll continue to scale and grow here, but the business is growing at a pace where I definitely need help, where there's no more, it's really my failure. There's no more me to go around. So there's got to be some more mini me's, or people with strategic vision to really move it forward to the next level.
Yeah, it's a common thing. Businesses outgrow employees, and all the way from leadership all the way down to the labor and the staff. It's not uncommon, that's for sure. And having a strategic plan for how you're bringing those people in or acquiring those people, or helping them grow, how you grew. It's a tough one. It's a common theme that we talk to almost everybody about in labor, aside from, growth plans, strategies, marketing, sales, the product, go to market, all those other pieces. Labor is always the human capital. It's the hiccup. It's always an obstacle.
Even the hourly labor is an issue. It's gotten really expensive, and not just the wages, but the workers' compensation insurance and the health insurance. And, we pay for 100% of our employees' health care. We have a profit sharing plan. Growing up blue collar, I really try to take care of my people. I don't just look at them as, pieces on a chessboard. But it's gotten prohibitively expensive. And then on top of that, no matter what I pay for even the direct labor in the factory, there's just not a workforce, particularly here in Orange County, California. None of these 20 to 30-year-olds want to come work in a wood factory all day, and you've got Panda Express paying $24 an hour down the street. So it's a really unique environment. So we've had to really pivot a lot towards robotics, automation, and leveraging, AI.
Gotcha. Who would you say, if you had to pick one person outside of yourself, that has been, pivotal in your growth, whether that's as an adult, whether that's as a parent growing up with work ethic, who would you pinpoint that on?
Yeah, I wouldn't put one person. So what I would say, I think I mentioned this earlier, is I believe in finding mentors and groups, right? So, in the corporate world, connecting with the people I worked for and with at an intimate level, so I could pull ideas and thought partner, et cetera, was important to me. When I left RSI, the chairman of that company is still a friend of mine and a mentor to me. So actually we're meeting on Thursday after work for a couple hours, where he helps me. He scaled that business from 25 million to $1 billion, right? And it's in the wood business too. So that's been a huge help. Joining the EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, and, serving on the board there now, et cetera. Getting around other people that are like-minded, that are building businesses at different levels and learning and growing from them. So I don't believe in that, hey, I'm going to attach myself to one person, because no one person knows everything, right? And everybody's got different things to bring to the table, different personalities, different experiences, good, bad, and ugly. So, what I try to do is not be stuck living on an island by myself. I think I've gotten better at this over the last 4 years in particular. Instead of just thinking I know everything and I've got to just go and do, is how do I bolt on, people and information around my life to help me grow. And I think technology helps that too. I mean, YouTube is invaluable. You can go on YouTube and learn almost anything. And you get so many different perspectives from so many different people, both just the common person and billionaires who, I've run Fortune 50 companies. So I'm a learner and a networker. And I think, that's probably a key to personal growth and professional success.
Well, circling back to failures and failing forward, when you became an entrepreneur, when you became a business owner and you did that acquisition, what was your one big mistake, or what was your hurdle that you didn't foresee or you weren't ready for, where you're like, man, I wish I could go back in time and I wish I would have known more about that?
I don't think To be candid with you, I say this humbly, I don't really have an example of that here in the
No.
last 5 years. If I could go back in my lifetime and say, what's a big mistake? I wish I figured this out earlier, right? So I wish I didn't spend, 15 or 16 years getting to the point of taking the jump, because the reality of it was, when I look back, one of the reasons I was very successful in my corporate life, I was the number 3 person in $1 billion business in my early 30s, is because I was very entrepreneurial at work. I was always a solutions person. I was always a person not waiting for someone to give me work. I'd have stuff I knew I had to do, but I'd also go and say, hey, I thought about this. What do you guys think about that? Or, hey, I noticed that you're struggling with this. Can I take that off your plate? Right. So, looking in hindsight, I probably could have made this move a lot earlier. And that would have saved me a lot of personal pain and issue. And it also would have accelerated kind of my growth, both personally and professionally.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. As we're going to start to wrap up, I think it's a great way to close it, but I want to give you the opportunity, if there's something that you want to leave behind for somebody getting ready to make that jump, or debating whether I should make that jump. I'm assuming your advice is do it, and do it now, but I want to hear from you. What would you give them?
Live your life urgently. I had a significant cardiac issue when I was very young, and it kind of taught me the value of how precious time is. If you want to learn more about that, you can visit my blog at officialrobertjohn.com. I have a lot of articles that kind of reference that, but urgency is important. The resource that you don't have, everyone says time is the most valuable currency, but it really is. But what people don't realize is how little of it you have under the best of circumstances. Speaking professionally, you've got a 20 to 25 year runway, and weeks go by, just like this, and years go by just as fast, really, when you look back at them. And you need to act urgently. Make sure that you're surrounding yourself with the right type of people who are pulling you up and not pulling you down. Constantly be a learner and a networker, and just put yourself out there. Be confident. Videos, for instance, marketing's huge. Don't worry about what you look like. I don't think I'm ugly. I'm also not the most attractive person. No one cares, right? Put yourself out there. Be confident. Being on your podcast is a blessing in itself. I do a couple of these a week now. It's a way to connect, learn, think, grow, get content for your brand, push things out there. Just live life urgently and confidently.
Awesome. Robert, I want to thank you. I don't want to take any more of your time. You've dropped some real nuggets here for our listeners, and hearing your story, and some advice that you have for them, just sharing your personal experiences. Thank you very much for being on. Where can Pacific Hardwood, what's the domain where they can check out your company at now?
Well, first off,
and then one more time for the blog. Also,
yeah,
please.
Steve, I appreciate your time as well. You can check out Pacific Hardwood at pacifichardwood.com. Visit us on Instagram at Pacific Hardwood. You can also find us on LinkedIn as well. If you want to email us, it's info@pacifichardwood.com, and our phone number is 714-998-6446. If you want to look at my leadership and lifestyle blog, you can see that at officialrobertjohn.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Robert. Have a great one. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. That was great. Have a good day.